Do you struggle with memorizing lines? Want to get off book faster without all the stress and headache? Stick around because I've got 5 tips proven and backed by actual science to help you supercharge your line memorization. And I promise none of them involve writing out all your lines by hand. Hey there, I'm Joyce Shea, and I'm the founder of offbookit.com, where I help actors just like you learn how to memorize lines fast and make them stick. So, line memorization. Typically, it's tedious, it's boring, and it takes forever. But I'm here to tell you that it doesn't have to be that way. Researchers have been studying the mind for a long time at this point, and they've actually figured out quite a lot about how we learn and remember things best. We can actually use these findings to our advantage and hack the line memorization process. So here I'm going to go through 5 scientifically proven tips to help you boost your memorization. And stick around to the very end because my last tip is all about how to avoid a very common line memorization trap that a lot of actors fall into. First up is chunking. Now I know chunking sounds like it could be something dirty or maybe the latest dance craze, but it is neither of those things. Chunking is the process of taking individual bits of information and grouping them into larger units. If you take a look around you, there are many things in this world that are chunked. Credit card numbers, social security numbers, phone numbers. If you think about it, even the spaces between words are a form of chunking. And when you look at these things, it becomes really clear why chunking is so useful. Breaking information into chunks makes it more digestible. It makes it more graspable. In other words, it makes it easier to read, easier to understand, and remember. So how do we apply this to line memorization? Easy. Break your script into chunks and memorize it chunk by chunk. And actors, we already have a tool at our disposal that is perfect for chunking, and that is dividing a text into beats. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with this practice, let me give a brief explanation. A beat is a chunk of text where your character is pursuing a single objective or goal. When your character moves on to a different objective, a new beat starts. When a new beat starts, it's usually pretty noticeable. There's a distinct shift to something else. Here are some things to look out for that tend to mark the start of a new beat. A change in subject matter, a change in tone, character entrances and exits. Now, dividing your text into beats is just the beginning. You can actually go one level further and chunk your text into phrases. This is especially important to do when you are memorizing monologues, because monologues are always printed on the page as big, fat paragraphs. Here's my advice. Never memorize big paragraphs of text without breaking it into smaller chunks first. Here's how you do it. You want to reformat your monologue so that you have one phrase per line. Then put a space between each beat. When you're done, the monologue should look more like stanzas in a poem rather than a big paragraph. This makes it a lot cleaner, easier on the eyes, and easier to work with. You can now more easily see the structure and story arc of the monologue. This makes it so much easier to memorize. Now it's simply a matter of committing it to memory, phrase by phrase and beat by beat. Tip number 2, elaboration. Elaboration is a learning strategy that involves enriching and encoding the information you're trying to remember with a lot of details and connections. By beefing up the material with these connections, you gain an in-depth, multidimensional understanding, which makes it a lot stickier and easier to remember. So where do you start when it comes to elaborating your script? Well, imagine you're a really annoying child in the backseat of a car and simply ask a lot of questions. Why is my character saying that? Why is my character doing that? What is my character trying to get? What is the problem here? More specifically, make sure you're paying close attention to the exact wording of the script. Don't treat any of the words as arbitrary. When you make specific choices about why your character is using those exact words, it makes it much easier to remember. Tip number 3, retrieval practice. Retrieval practice is a learning strategy where you practice calling information to mind and getting it out. Basically, you want to practice fetching the lines from your memory. In other words, you want to test yourself. Doing this strengthens memories. Now, this is very different from just rereading your lines over and over again on the page. Rereading can actually be a big waste of time. Just rereading your lines over and over again can get you caught in something called the fluency illusion. The fluency illusion occurs when you are reviewing material at hand, and because you recognize the material, you trick yourself into thinking that you've mastered it and that you know it. The information seems easy to remember because it's right in front of you, but you don't realize that your memory for the material is quite weak. Here's the bottom line. You don't know what you know until you test yourself. So try to get away from your script more. Look away and try to recite your lines from memory. Then look back at your script and see whether or not you got it right. It's a small adjustment, but it makes a big difference. Tip number 4, spaced repetition. Studies have shown that we retain and recall information better when we learn and revisit that information in multiple spread out sessions. It's way more effective than cramming or continuous study. So spaced repetition is simply spreading out your learning over spaced intervals of time, basically taking strategic breaks. What's amazing about spaced repetition is that it actually allows you to remember more and retain information for longer while spending less time studying. So here's what you do. You learn your lines, then you take a little break. Then you come back and do the scene again. Then you take an even longer break. And then you come back and do it again and take an even longer break, and so on. Now, the next logical question is, of course, what space-time intervals should you be using? How long of breaks exactly should you be taking? There isn't a hard and fast rule on this. It's largely dependent on when exactly you need to be off book. Is your audition or performance really soon, or do you have a little more time to prepare? The faster you need to be off book, the shorter your time intervals should be. If you have more time to work with, you can use some longer intervals. This is something you can experiment with, but to get you started, here are some sample space intervals you could try. This should get you off book fairly quickly. Try your first repetition after 15 to 20 minutes, your second repetition after 2 hours, your third repetition after 6 hours, and your fourth repetition after 24 hours. Tip number 5, state-dependent learning. As promised, this tip is all about how to avoid a very common line memorization trap. Let me know if this has ever happened to you. You've memorized your lines really diligently at home, but then when it comes time to actually perform or do the audition, you start blanking on your lines. When this happens, you might be getting caught in something called state-dependent learning. This is a phenomenon where when we learn something, the environment we learned it in becomes encoded and tied to the memory of that thing. So if your learning environment and your performance environment are really different, this can end up throwing you off and make it really difficult to recall your lines when it comes time to perform. There are a couple ways you can go about trying to avoid this trap. Strategy 1, try to make your practice environment resemble your performance environment as much as possible. Really try to create the circumstances of what that audition will really be like. Now, this is actually a reason why doing self-tapes at home can be so advantageous, because you can literally just practice in the same exact environment that you will be performing in. Strategy 2, another way you can try to avoid state-dependent learning, is to simply mix things up a lot. Try to practice in different places, in different ways, at different times. Doing this will make it so that your memorization is independent of your environment, which gives you a lot more flexibility. Now, the tips that I gave you here in this video are just the beginning. There are so many more strategies that I'd love to share with you. If you want to dive a little deeper and learn a lot more juicy line memorization tips and tricks from me, as well as the exact strategies I use with my own students, I encourage you to check out my free masterclass, Memorizing Lines the Smart Way. You can find that at offbookit.com/masterclass. So did you find these tips valuable? If so, please hit that like button and share this with a friend. Also, let me know in the comments, which of these tips did you find the most helpful? Thanks for watching, take care, and happy memorizing!